As a listener to the Mood and Food podcast, you can save a full 20% off the complete range of vitamins and supplements for your mental and physical health at iGenus.com. All you have to do is enter the code ADDVITALITY in capitals at checkout. That's ADDVITALITY in capitals at checkout, and your order will be discounted by 20%. And the website at iGenus.com contains some great articles and health information too. That's IGENNUS.com. Hi, this is Andrew Bridgewater, Chartered Psychologist, and welcome to episode 58 of the Mood and Food podcast. I'm going to do something a little bit different in this podcast. I'm actually going to introduce and then include a chapter of my book, Fit for Business, How to Deal with Stress and Enjoy a Healthy Work-Life Balance. And this, for me, was possibly the most important chapter of the book. And I'm going to title this podcast, Every Human Being Has Innate Mental Health. Every human being has innate mental health. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Sydney Banks, who brought the 3 principles understanding to the world. And the podcast episode really explains why I found the 3 principles so helpful in the context of my own mental health journey. And just briefly, I found myself in a psychiatric hospital for 5 weeks in the UK in early 2006 over something that had happened in my life. It was actually the purchase of a property that I felt I couldn't afford. The power of thought. And I thought myself into a very deep, dark place with this, so bad that I actually wanted to end my life, which sounds crazy when I relay it now. But the journey's been profound, and this chapter of the book kind of explains the rationale for that in terms of the 3 principles. And something else I want to mention is that after 2006, I was on heavy doses of antidepressant medication for 2 years, prescribed by an outplacement psychiatrist who told me that I'd be on that medication for life. And I thought, this can't be right. There must be other ways of dealing with severe stress which don't involve heavy doses of medication, which is where my research started to take me, hence ultimately writing the book, creating this podcast and all sorts of other things that I've been able to support myself with and help other people with. One of the biggest breakthroughs for me was coming across iGenus, who, as you know, are the sponsors to this podcast, and in particular a product of theirs called Bridgewater, which I took alongside antidepressant medication for a year or so, and which ultimately resulted in me being able to come off that medication altogether. Now, this isn't medical advice. I'm not saying this is what you should do. You must follow the advice of the practitioner who prescribed that medication if you're on any form of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. But that was what I did. And actually, iGenus sell Bridgewater, but they also sell another product for a similar use, which is actually slightly stronger these days. I highly recommend trying it. And the beauty of trying it is that you can do so alongside pharmaceutical drugs. It won't interfere or interact with those. And this information came to light for me through a book called The Natural Way to Beat Depression by Professor Puri, a Cambridge academic who very well researched his topic. And when I took the book to my psychiatrist, he said, I don't believe that, just keep taking the pharmaceuticals, which is where I started to inquire. So that's just my story. It's not medical advice, but please do listen to this chapter of the book. Stressful feelings always start with thinking. If you're feeling stressed, it's your thinking that's causing those stressful feelings. It's easy to believe that the stress is coming from something or someone in the world out there, but it's your thinking about what's going on that creates the stressful feelings and reactions. Shakespeare knew this fundamental truth over 400 years ago when he wrote, "Nothing is either good or bad in itself. It's all what a person thinks about it." That's from Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2. This was a revelation for me and very comforting because I realised that in order to feel more relaxed and less stressed, I didn't have to change anything in the world out there or wait for it to change. I just had to understand that this is the way we create our experience of life. the illusory nature of the world of form. During several months of severe stress in 2006, I caught a powerful glimpse of the illusory nature of the world of form. Having seen it once, I became convinced that what we see in the world out there is much more a reflection of the nature of our thinking than anything else. The unpleasant sights, sounds and smells that I experienced while severely depressed were as real as anything I'd ever experienced before, and yet I know for certain that they were not real, just very compelling, like the virtual reality roller coaster. In many ways, this insight feels like a privilege, and one which I feel compelled to share with others, even if at the time it was deeply frightening. In fact, the only times we suffer psychologically are when we believe our own negative thoughts. Just reflect on that for a moment. We don't know the next thought that's going to come into our head. They just come. The good news is that we don't have to work hard to change negative thoughts. Just realise that that's all they are, negative thoughts. We have the freedom to choose whether to pay attention to them or not, act upon them or not. Every human being has innate mental health. Sydney Banks said the above, and it really resonates with me. If you believe that in order to feel happier and less stressed, you need to think better quality thoughts, the temptation is to work hard to create these types of thoughts. Paradoxically, this may well make a sense of calm and happy feelings harder, rather than easier to experience. Coming out of hospital in 2006 was like waking up for a long nightmare. Yet I didn't need to do anything to feel massively better. I just needed to stop believing and paying attention to a consistent stream of negative thoughts. I've experienced this power working in my own life. I know how to do this. There's nothing to do. The medication I was given allowed my overactive negative thinking to take a break, and once it did, I started to feel better much quickly and could get back in touch with my innate mental health. But ultimately, low moods and low mood thinking will pass on their own when we simply allow them to. Antidepressants mask the symptoms but don't deal with the underlying causes of stress. If you experience depression or anxiety and visit the doctor, there's a strong chance that some form of medication will be prescribed. The challenge for doctors is that appointments are rarely more than 10 minutes, and in such a short period of time it's very difficult to make more than a cursory diagnosis of the real problem. When I visited one of the GPs at my local surgery after experiencing prolonged stress symptoms in early 2006, I was asked, "Apart from writing you out a cheque for £80,000, what would you like me to do?" This wasn't a frivolous question. The doctor was effectively acknowledging his inability to help deal with what we both mistakenly believed was the underlying cause of my depression. I now realised that the true cause was believing my own unhelpful and negative thinking. Unfortunately, I visited the doctor that day with very unrealistic expectations about what could be done to help me. I wanted to feel better fast, and so a strange type of collaborative conspiracy emerged whereby the doctor prescribed something which I in turn believed would alleviate the problems I was experiencing. In this particular case, I was prescribed a sleeping tablet called Zopiclone because I told the doctor that my biggest problem was not being able to sleep. Having difficulty sleeping was, of course, a side effect of chronic mental stress, and what I really needed to do was understand the underlying causes of that stress, but a 10-minute appointment provided no real possibility of doing so. Any drug that might have been prescribed that day could do no more than mask the symptoms I was experiencing. I saw 3 different GPs within the space of a few weeks, and all followed the same type of approach. Unfortunately, the depression was so deep that it was too late to put preventative measures in place, and what I needed was immediate and remedial help. This is the only basis on which I believe drugs can be prescribed. Even then, other longer-term measures and a better understanding of how we create our experience of life are required too. Drugs wouldn't help change the negative thinking patterns, and poor lifestyle habits which had created the problems I was experiencing. But there was also a more immediate problem for me. Antidepressants don't work straight away. The difficulty with presenting myself at the doctor's and looking for a way to feel better fast was that it takes several weeks for antidepressant medication to have any effect, if it does at all. The first drug I was prescribed, citalopram 20 milligrams, had absolutely no effect for me after more than 3 weeks. This disappointment came on the back of the knowledge that it had made a significant difference for a relative who was taking the same drug long term. I'm not going to go into detail on how these drugs work because it's well documented elsewhere. However, the theory is that drugs like citalopram gradually alter the chemical balance of the brain, allowing the patient to begin to feel better so that they can get to work on improving other aspects of their life. The problem is that antidepressant drugs don't work in the same way for everyone, and they have different side effects for different people. I discovered that effective natural alternatives are available in the form of high-quality fish oil and evening primrose oil. I also tried St. John's wort, but found that it seemed to make my heart race, or perhaps that was just a placebo effect. I'll be happy when. Realising that no thing, circumstance or person will make you happy can be very liberating. Many business people, myself included until quite recently, have the attitude that we just have to achieve the goal and we think we'll be happy. This is a trap, and the problem with striving for a goal to make you happy is that when you get there, a sense of, is this all there is, can prevail. So you set another goal and the whole thing starts all over again. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have goals, I'm just suggesting that you look at them in a different way. I started the process of becoming a chartered psychologist back in 1995 and remember thinking that when I achieved the goal I'd be happy. The journey was much more profound and powerful than the final destination arrived at 10 years later. In other words, I found that it's really important to consciously enjoy the process of doing something which we see as contributing to the realisation of a goal. Take creating this book, for example. I'm beginning to find that sitting down and writing really can be happiness-inducing in itself. Something happens in the process of writing to clarify ideas and thinking in a way that doesn't happen just by thinking about them. This in itself makes me happy if I reflect on it. In true slight edge fashion, bringing happiness to life can become a habit. It's certainly a good one to cultivate and makes us much more attractive to be around. A few simple rituals every day to compound to produce a massive difference. For example, meditation, a favourite form of exercise, proper hydration, keeping in touch with loved ones and friends. These are just a few of those things that are easy to do but also easy not to do. So if you don't do them today or tomorrow, you probably won't feel any less happy. But over time, the positive compounding effect becomes enormous. Simple truths to be aware of. Know that whatever you're feeling at a given moment is only the product of your own thinking and no one else's. That being said, take personal responsibility for the thinking that you choose to pay attention to and the resulting feelings. That way there's no one else to blame if you don't like the results, and you won't have to wait a long time for someone else or something else to change for you to feel better. Pay attention to the early warning signs of stress in your own body or behaviour. I've encouraged you to think about how stress manifests for you. It's much easier to interrupt a limiting pattern around stress when you can spot the early warning signs. Most importantly, remind yourself of how you're creating the experience via thought, and if you need to, take constructive action by choosing something from the list of positive stress busters. If you're feeling agitated, you probably won't make great decisions. Ask yourself if you're arriving at this decision or action from a place of fear or love. If coming from fear, you won't be fully open to the power of intuition, which relies on connecting with mind or universal intelligence. So delay making that important decision. Have you noticed that your best decisions and creative ideas tend to arise when your head is not cluttered with unhelpful thinking, such as 3 days into the holiday, taking a shower or a bath, walking in the mountains, or during meditation and yoga? Think of a cluttered and agitated state as creating static around the reception of fresh new thinking. A quiet and peaceful mind is your factory default setting, and you can access it at any time when you understand and apply the principles covered in this book. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Mood and Food podcast. If you'd like to listen to the complete audio version of Fit for Business, How to Deal with Stress and Enjoy a Healthy Work-Life Balance, just go to amazon.co.uk or amazon.com and you can download it on Audible, or you can also purchase the paperback or the ebook copy of the book. So this is Andrew Bridgewater, Chartered Psychologist. If you have any questions or you'd like to email me, please do so, andrew@andrewbridgewater.com. And I'll look forward to speaking to you on the next edition of the Mood and Food podcast. Bye for now.